Yeah, hi Raj. This is Praveen. So today we'll have a live webinar on Ngrx. That's a state management application in the Angular applications. So we're
Mhm.
going to look at the few of the topics. Before that, I'll just introduce myself. Myself Praveen, and I have around 10 years of industrial experience. So I worked as a full stack development. So has a very good experience in Angular, NGRX, React, and all. So today
Okay.
in this webinar, we're going to cover few of the things.
Praveen, Praveen, sorry, a stack developer, you mean a Java or .NET?
I do Java and Node.js. I'm not a .NET guy.
Okay. That's good.
Okay,
That's nice for me.
okay, okay. So uh, what is the agenda of today is we just wanted to cover the few of the modules in the NGRX and how it is being used in NGR Angular application. So it will be more of kind of introduction course for you, and I will see this particular course is just so designed that it can be taken for multiple audiences. So IT professionals to any analyst in the technology who has some background with Angular or JavaScript can learn this type of technology. So okay, so as I said earlier, so NGRX, you might be knowing NG is always referring to the Angular next generation. So, and then NGRX is nothing but we have a reactive state for Angular. So you might be aware of RxJS and other stuff. It's a reactive version of JavaScript. And we have a lot of things talking about Redux nowadays with React coming over like Angular and React, like more or same kind of frameworks that are used widely in the full stack development and basically in the UI front end development. So, uh, so why we use NGRX and what is the aspects it gives us? What are the advantages and how we incorporate those into in our application? So all these things we'll see in next slides, and I will also show small demo. I mean, like how the small application is built using NGRX. Okay.
Yeah.
So the outline of the actual technical slides goes here. So basically, we have to see how to use NGRX with the state in the Angular application, and TypeScript is the one which is like more backing all these new technologies coming over Angular, and NGRX also supports TypeScript. So we'll see how TypeScript helps us to code easily and more without any hassle-free things. Then we'll understand what is application state. Maybe you will already aware of what exactly the state and how the Angular application will be, but we'll just touch upon the introduction.
No, no, no. I'm completely new to Angular, but I wanted to have this demo because then in my project we are going to work with Angular 8. So Angular 8, but specifically we work with the store stuff. That's why I wanted to have a demo on store. Then I'm sure that the training that I'm going to take would make me ready for my ready in terms of my working at the project.
Yeah, I mean, when I say you already know as end user, right? So because though you have not worked or
Yeah,
developed
yeah, yeah.
anything on the. Yeah, so I mean the work while talking with the slides and while going through the course. So whatever the terminologies I take it, so you should be knowing. That's why I'm just curious about. I mean, concerned about that. I think once
Okay.
you have a,
Yeah.
yeah. So because sometimes if it is from scratch, right? So whatever we talk, terminologies will be differing from each other. So if you already not even worked, I mean, if you already gone through as end user and you know what is Angular at least in a high level, so that will be make you easy for the further
Yeah, yeah. The high
course.
level, yes. The high level, yes. I
Yeah,
could understand that.
yeah, definitely. So then we'll touch upon what exactly the problem you're trying to solve, and then some of the hands-on examples. So we'll take it. So
Yeah.
coming to
Okay.
the what is application state. So uh, giving a small example, right? So in a customer management application, storing the customers is just a one state, like it is a single source of truth, you can say. All the information, all the data that is interacted with the user, that is interacted with the server, whole your application. um, is involving some of the data to be shown, some of the data to be processed, some of the data to be transformed to the server, transferred from the server. So all these data is actually a kind of state for us. So maybe we will, based on our business application, business case, we will choose what to store and what not to store. But all things are as a whole, we'll call it as a state. And once we drill down, so we store few of the details, and we don't store few of the details because we don't need it um, for a longer period of time. So we just need it on the fly, and we use it, and we just lost it in the memory itself. But if you want to have a persisted data across the components in your UI, and we go for a application state. So as I told, if you go theoretically, it is entire memory of the application, and typically it is the
Okay.
data that is received from the API calls and user inputs and the presentation in the UI state, and sometimes app preferences. All these are
Okay.
application state. And what is that? It's simply put, it is data that can differentiate two instances of same application. Like, because when you have a same application, right? And suppose one has 10 customers and one has only two customers. So if you see the state of the both of the application, both are having a difference in their structure, or maybe whole data is different, because this same instance of application can be worked with a different data set of data in the state. So that's always we say, if you open a application in the browser, and we always interact with some of the data, and that data is always a single source of truth. Whole your application should always trust that state and then interact with that state. So it is always a single source of truth for us. So apart from the
Okay.
that particular state, we don't recommend to keep any of the uh, variable names or data in the variables in your in the local component. As long as it is only needed for that component, it is fine. But if you start communicating with the different components across the application, if you want to share the data between the components in the application, so then always we have to store in the state, and we have to retrieve from the state. That's the kind of architecture we use. So as I
Okay.
told earlier, the simple concrete example is that, again, listing of the customer maintained application. So we'll be using this example for our hands-on as well.
Okay.
So then what exactly the problem we're going to solve? So let's assume like we have a list of customers in the application and the state we're trying to manage. Some of the API calls and the user inputs could change the state, because customers can be added, can be removed. These are the UI actions that are provided for the application to the user. So user can add a new customers, user can delete the old customer. Accordingly, it has to update the components. So suppose one component is listing the customers, and one component is giving the app giving the provisions to do the actions from the user. So when you click on the add customer, automatically the listing of the customer component should start listing the new customer. And also when you delete it, it should remove from the list of the customers. All these components has to be interacted with each other, and they has to be updated with the common set of data. So that is what we use at a state. Surely in this particular case, right, we can have a global variable to hold the list and then add a remove customer from to it, then write a code to update that UI in the dependencies. So that can be also done without having a state. If you can say like, I can do it without a state, I can just maintain a global say list of customers, and I can add it from there and remove it from there. So that is all agree, but there are many pitfalls, if you can say, in that design. So you have to constantly maintain that state. It should not be altered without any changes from the other than the actions you provide to the user. And even if you route from one component to the other component, that particular global variable should not be reset. So many things are there. And also when you have a global variable set, right, you have to subscribe to that. So whenever we get the any alter data gets altered in that variable, you have to be notified. So all these things are the different aspects of that, so storing it as a global variable. So considering this as a one thing, and one more thing as a Ngrx. So if you see both the things, Ngrx is very great design. So if whatever we talked about, everything will come as a standard architecture framework. So you need to maintain the state, and there will be some of the APIs available to interact with the state. So it is all made in such a way that it is very great design for the most of the state management applications. So that's why we go for the Ngrx when we have Angular, and similarly we have a Redux for the React applications. So, and Ngrx is inspired by the Redux. And the prerequisite should be like you should be knowing at least high level of Angular and a little bit of RxJS. So don't worry if you don't know also. I mean, I will try to give a glimpse of each thing whenever I go to the each slide. But maybe to understand more and to make see you are comfortable, you need to study RxJS. And because this is out of the scope of this particular training, so Redux is also again a it is a kind of inspiration for the NGRX to evolve. If you go to NGRX website, again, you can see the Redux is the inspiration for them. So if you know the little bit of Redux architecture or a working of Redux, then that is also will be helpful. And obviously, when you are working with Angular or any of the JavaScript frameworks, asynchronous style of programming is definitely a one understanding that is prerequisite for learning this particular NGRX.
Yeah.
So next, go to the NGRX app state management. So as I told earlier, so these are the different aspects that is given by the NGRX. So we call it a store, and we call action, reducer, selector, effect. So these are the five things we usually use it for our state management application using NGRX. So what exactly is a store? A store is what holds the app state. So uh, you know already state is a memory, it is just data that we interact and everything. So where you want to store the uh, state, so that's the place where we call what we call is a store. And action, so again these are the very common terminologies, and maybe definition wise looks like it is very complex, but high level if you understand, right? So action means it's again in order to apply update the state, so there is some action from the user, or maybe there is some action as business wise. So that time we call it as actions, like kind of adding a customer in our application. So that's one of the action, removing the customer. And if at all, if it's not a user actions, maybe it's something called maybe like frequency interval basis, some of the actions can be triggered. Maybe in the share market, right? So if you want to update the UI every second with the latest data that is present from that is coming from the server. So that is a business action, you can say. There's a business is triggering the action. So yeah, you will be writing some of the interval, some of the program or some of the code that will trigger action every 1 second and get the data from the server and update the state. And once you update the state, and whatever the components that are listening to the state will get updated automatically. So this is the way we work with NGRX. Again, reducer, what exactly is the reducer? Reducer is the one place where actually this is a pure function. So it takes the two basically a kind of data, right? One is action, one is the state. So based on what action, what uh, state has to be updated. I mean, so for the adding, right, you have to add the customer to the list. For removing the action, you have to remove from the list. Like that, there will be some interaction with the state for each of the action. And that interaction, what type of the interaction? Like for adding the customer, it is a add addition, and for removing it is a kind of deletion. So all these are actions, and for all these are interactions are defined in the reducers. And selector,
Mhm.
so if you go to some industrial enterprise application, right, so you have a lot of big state available to you. So you have a lot of more, like more than 15, 20, 50 components are there in your application, and then you have a big state, and in your state, right, you want to maybe read only some part of the state, kind of maybe like you want to read the username, or you maybe want to read the customer ID. So that time, right, so whole state cannot be read and need not to be read and used it. So only some part of the state can be used it. So using the selector we can achieve this particular thing. And effect is nothing but see most of the times what we do is from the components only we trigger the actions, and from the actions we go to the reducer because that is the one which is interacting with the state. So along with this information, so effect is nothing but like if you want to add something else. So because if you do customer add, you might want to talk to the server, or you might want to do some processing asynchronously. So some extra things you want to do on particular action. So those things can be done using effects.
So, uh, so for example, if I'm going to save the new customer, so should I do it via effect or the reducer?
Uh, Reducer is the one which is going to update the store, that is for sure. So effects is nothing but a maybe some of the intermediate task you are saying. Suppose I'm saying that if you want to do the API call to the server, so that time you should use the effects. So if it's direct state update, you can directly from the action you should go to reducer and reducer to store. So in this diagram where you are saying a state management life cycle, so already I explained what is storage. Store is the state, and then selector is the one which is selecting some part of the state, and that is being exposed by the component, and component showing the some part of the date. I mean, this is a looks. Assume this component is one component in your whole application, and this one component is selecting some of the state, some part of the state, and that is been shown to the UI. And in the UI, there are some buttons or some of the controls for the user action. Suppose like add customer is there. So if you click, user is clicking on the add customer, that is the action for you. So once if you when you receive a click event on the add button, so what you want to do, you want to perform the action which is add customer. So add customer is the action. So if you want to do the direct update to the store, so suppose this is a simple application not hosted on the server, or maybe like this is kind of hands-on example. So then what we directly do is you call the you dispatch the action. I will tell you what exactly the dispatching. So once you dispatch the action from the component, so it will land in reducers, and reducer will update the state by adding the new customer to the list. But once you click on the add customer, and once you receive that action, and before we are calling to the reducer, we wanted to make sure that is communicated to the server, or maybe you want to do some extra task. So that time, right, we should use effects. So, and effects is using services here, because services are the ones which are which are defined for the interaction with the server. Always in your Angular, so you don't do the API calls in the components or directly. So you use the service. We write a service, and service will interact with the server. So that's why we have always connected the service with the effects. So effects are more useful when you want to do some extra task other than updating the state. So here, when I add a customer, I wanted to communicate to the server. That time I can use effect, and I can use the services, and services have a API implementation already. So that API is called, and we get the response back, and we have the effects in place, and that effects again communicates back to the action. And then normal procedure action will again, once action is dispatched, reducer will get the actions, and based on the reducer actions code, so it will interact with the state. That interaction is nothing but a addition of the customer in this case.
Okay.
So before we go to hands-on, right, so what exactly we need for this particular application hands-on example to run, right? So we have a Node.js. We already know Node.js is the runtime environment for our Angular. So without Node.js server, you cannot run the Angular project until and unless you build it on your own and then host it on some of the other servers. But when you go with Angular CLI in your development, we always use a Node server for our serving the front-end content. So this is a very normal stuff. I think we are using ngnew. So if you are not known, I think I will just explain. Ngnew is nothing but a Angular CLI command to to create a new application. So when you say ngnew, and then if you give the name, and as per the Angular standards, it will create a directory, and it will give the boilerplate hello world example that is placed. It's not hello world, it's a similar to the hello world. It's a simple application that got generated once you use the ngnew. So then also once we do npm start, so that is for the actual running of the application. Before that, we should install the dependencies by using npm install. So IDE can be used anything. So I'm using IntelliJ here.
Okay, we use the front end tool, the Visual.
Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, anything is fine. ID is not a matter. It is comfortable as per the developer's experience. So so far, right? So we have, I mean, Ngrx doesn't come by default with Angular again. So once we have already Angular application created, and we can I mean, install the Ngrx store by running npm install Ngrx store and all. So this is for the creating a customer model. So this can be done manually, or this can be used as here ng class models and customers. So once we you can use this generation of the customer model using yeah, ng comments, or you can create it on your own using IDE. So no problem with that. So again, I was saying, right, so adding the actions. So here we have two actions. One is add customer and one is remove customer. So both the actions are defined in such a way that that is compatible with store. So whatever I was talking about, this is the introduction class demo, and I was trying to explain you very high level as a flow how whole NGRX looks like and what is the use of using it, and what are the glimpse of each of the terminologies, glimpse of each of the API that is giving to us. So when we go into deeper, so you might be knowing what exactly the action, and so in order to make one action, create a one action, so the NGRX will make sure will ask you to put a mandatory fields. Suppose here, right, if you see sorry, so you might be seeing there is a read-only type and the payload. So and this is kind of this action is implementing the action. So this action is nothing from the, this is from the Ngrx API, Ngrx library, and we are extending it using action example EX, and that is the type and the payload. So these are the two things that are very necessary for each of the action that we incorporate in our application. So coming to the reducers again. So here if we have a type, right? So this is a read-only type. Type is nothing but a, it is identifying the action. So based on this type only, the whole reducer code is dependent. So if you see here, if you have the switch case action dot type, and if you say customer action types dot add, nothing. This is nothing but this is referring to the add customer action. And if you have one more case here, customer action types dot remove, this is referring to the remove action. So and for the add action, what is the interaction to the state here? So we are copying the state and we are adding the payload. Payload is nothing but the new customer. So we are adding the new customer to the existing customer and making it as a new list. So this is the addition. And for the removal, we are using slice. Slice is nothing but you can remove the particular element from the array. So here we are creating a new list by slicing from 0th index to the index of the, here for the removal, payload is always the index. So from 0th to the index of the customer that is to be removed, that part I will take, and also the other part, the action payload plus one from the next element of the customer which has to be deleted to the end of the customers. So I will take all this data and then make it as a new state. That means whatever the customer data that is going to remove, that is ignored here. We are using slice, and that particular customer index is ignored. So that's why when we have a new list, that list is does not have a the customer which has been removed. So if other than these two actions, if any other actions come and land here, so suppose if you add in your code, you added three actions, but you forgot to put the reducer code here, then what will happen? It will just do nothing because it is nothing doing in the state. It will come to default case and it will just returning the state of the existing one. So if you see here, the state is initial state. So what is the initial state here? Empty customer. So this is the initial state, and if you have whatever customers added earlier, that will be stored in the state, and only that state is returned. So there will be no state interaction for the third action if you defined it and if you forgot to define it in reducer. Whatever the action you want to perform and whatever the state interaction you want to do, that has to be done via the actions, and that is in the all the switch cases that we do and define it in the reducer. And once we have reducer and all this code, but how to tell that Angular that these are the things I'm using, and how to bind the library, Ngrx library to the Angular, that is in the app module. So you import the reducer here, customer reducer I'm importing, and there is a statement store module dot for root customers and customer reducer. So this can be any good name to identify your state, and then customer reducer is the one which is to be linked to the Angular. Once you declare this statement in your ng module, that time Angular will understand that it is been used as a ngrx state management, and this is the reducer I should use it for my actions. So like that, more and
One
more
moment.
reduce. Yeah.
Sorry, Praveen, to interrupt you. What does it mean, the for root? I mean, store module dot for root. What exactly the for root means?
So this is the way of registering your reducer to the Angular application. So Angular is a modularized framework, right? So it will give different modules. So for the ngrx, in order to use ngrx, so ngrx will define your store module. Here if you see, store module is nothing but a module that is imported from the ngrx. Okay, and we are using that module in our Angular application, and this app dot module is the one which is the root of your Angular application. If you define it here, then
So,
it's kind of register. Yeah,
so when
tell
I
me.
say the module dot for root, does it include this reducer to the something kind of a root module, or because there can be like for root or for something else or for something else. Uh,
No, this is for the adding it in app module. So there can be multiple things, but for root is always used for one module. So here, if you can, this is app module. If even if you have your own module also, you can use for root. That means it is kind of for whole module, for whatever the module you have. Here it's app dot module, right? For that whole module, this is the root module, and that for that root module you are registering your reducer. So
okay.
even though you, I mean, if you are aware of any other framework, right? For example, Prime NG and also those are the UI libraries that are available. So if you want to use anything outside of your third party other than Angular, right? So this is the way we register that. So we import the module that is from the third party library. Here in case of ngrx, we are importing the store module, and we are using the store module to register customer, registering a reducer, and then that is declared in the imports of the ng module. At ng module, this is decoration, right, in your Angular. So what all things you are importing the store module that is from the ngrx, and we are registering the reducer for that module. So it means like when you have an action dispatched, it will come to know it. These are the things that are included in your you all in your app model. So even in the, if you say normal way of import, including the things to your program, right, in your C program, Java, wherever. So importing is the one which is nothing but you can say including the libraries or including the dependencies. So here also this is a kind of including your dependencies or registering your dependencies to the your ng module.
Okay.
So once we have everything ready, right, so then we can directly use it in our components. So here if you can see, already we have a customer view. So kind of there is a component customers view dot component dot ts. This is the UI component that is exposed outside to the user. So reducers and all that won't be, those are not UI components, but those are the pure function that are helpful for our state management. But this is the actual view component that is exposed to the user. So here if you see in the constructor, we again take the store, because in order to interact with the state, so we always have a store. Store is the one which is the kind of, maybe you can say, root module or whatever. It is the main thing for our main class for our ngrx management. state management. So that's why when you have a constructor, once you have store, so this is automatically injected by the Ngrx because we already imported that in the app module. So then store dot pipe here it is, that's what I was earlier telling. So pipe and all these are RxJS terminologies. So these are when you say pipe, so it's intermediate uh, task that is performed on the observable. So store is the kind of observable. On the pipe we select. So select is again a API from the Ngrx, and we say customers. So in our state we are selecting the customers. That's what I told it. Select is for the in your whole state. We wanted to select some part of the state. So here we are using the store.pipe. It looks like these are very complex things, but these are very straightforward. And once you know the terminologies, this will be very straightforward. So I am selecting the customers. So and those customers are in here in our field this dot customers, and again this dot customers is observable because this is a kind of subscription and publishing module. So the state is stored and we have a observable. Once we have a observable, we subscribe to it, and any change in the store, any change in the state, it gets notified to the observables. So any new customer gets added, it automatically gets that new customer in the in our variable because of the observable. So here if you see observable is again from the RxJS. Select and store are from the Ngrx store, and customer is nothing but it's a plain TypeScript model. I think more next all things are like more of only the UI components. So I will skip those and directly I will show the demo so that you will have more glimpse of how it is.
The demo we are going to do it in the uh, not in the slide but in the IDE, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you able to see my ID?
Yes. No. Yes.
Okay. So let me go to each and everything. First is app module. So here I was telling, right? So this is the store module I was saying, and this is the store module dot for root. This is I'm registering the customer reducer. If you go to the customer reducer, you will have a add and a remove. So whatever the things I've explained, the same code is present here. So and also if you see the customer actions, so the type is add here, and for the remove customer remove, it's a remove here, and payload is currently for the customer add. Payload is the new customer to be added. For the remove, payload is nothing but the customer index that is to be removed. So once we define actions and then reducers is already ready. So if you look at the customer view, right? So I am using the customers, and which is of observable. It has a customer array. It's of type customer array, and then I'm selecting some part of the state, and then that is stored in a customer variable. So this is kind of observable. Once we get any updates to the customer list, this particular variable
When you say
directly,
observe, when
yeah.
you say observable customer, what does it mean?
So I think that is maybe out of the context. I'll definitely explain you. Observable is nothing but a, it's a kind of subscriber and publisher architecture. Uh, Suppose there is a centralized state, right? We are what we already know about the state. So anything that gets changed in the state, so that has to be notified to the our variable. So our variable, if you define it as observable, then it gets notified by the state. So whatever the state updates happens, it will get notified to the that particular variable. So in order to make that happen, so we have to declare that as observable. That is the constructor or API, you can say, API that is available from the RxJS. So this is an,
So, uh,
yeah.
so for example, so we have some actions to be performed like well, create or say, okay, if you
Hmm.
create, okay, that's going to change. So for example, for the creation or any kind of actions that we take on the front end, then all those objects are observables, right? Because we have to keep track the state that is going. I mean, because you have to
Correct.
catch the state, or what's going to change or to be added.
Yes, most of the
So
things will
all
be
those,
yes,
yeah.
all the things will be observables, and that is not come by default. I mean, we have to be declared as customers, and then we have to perform like this. So this store is a observable, and when we pipe it and we pass it as a data select, so then this will become a observable, and that observable is assigned to the customers. So this is a
Okay,
kind of way of creating a observable. So kind of store.pipe is kind of observable. That is uh, you can say subscribed on the this particular data. So this data is again nothing but a part of the state.
okay.
Okay. So let me go to the my browser.
So are we going to set up a new dummy application now, or what are we going to do in the demo?
So this is the whole code which I showed. It's ready. I mean it is running actually. So I will show the running app and then interaction with that app.
Uh, Maybe is it possible we set up a dummy one, or I don't know what you prefer. So because for me,
I
then when you set up a dummy one, then I know that stepwise what we are doing. But if it's already set up one, then I don't know where it starts and where it ends. For example, how the application, I mean, okay, just imagine that it's loading and then I know that it starts from app module, but just to have the workflow.
So I mean that is I mean not possible because this is kind of 45 minutes um, 45 minutes to 1 hour session, so that may not be possible to show it from the beginning. So that is very simple, as you as I showed earlier in the documents. It is kind of creating a new application, new Angular application. So I think once we have the start going to the training, right? So that time we can start from day one. We can start creating the application, then add more and more functionality to as and when we learn different application, different concepts.
Okay.
So this is again, I mean, this is the sample application that we already just saw the code. And here, if you think, see, I'm just adding my name. Okay, so then if I say click add, right? So this is one, this is the uh, list. This is the list that is maintained by the Ngrx, and that we are showing it here. So if I click it again, right? So it's going to add the new customers that is from the customer add action. Okay, if you go to the Redux, right? So the Redux is a like it's a
Yeah,
I don't
no, I know. Yeah, here you can watch the.
yeah. So basically, I think it's not coming. Maybe this is from different application. Okay, somehow I have not registered. Okay, it is here. Okay, do that part. I mean, that will come in a dev tools. So okay, so these are the list of the customers that are stored in the state, and once you want to remove, right? So it will just get removed from the list. So if you go to the code again, and I will show you. So this right, so this is remove customer. So earlier, if you go to the HTML and this is
Can
the
you
button.
can you hold on because I don't. Now I see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is HTML. Here I have a button and I have on click register, remove customer, and this is the index I'm passing because it's a let customer of it, and I have a I equal to index. So the remove customer is receiving the index. And if you go to the remove index, right? So this remove index is the sorry. So this remove index is the function that is called on the click of button remove, and if we get the index, and this is the way we call the actions. So once we dispatch, there is the earlier I told what a dispatch means. So it is kind of NGRX terminology to invoke the action. So the store is the one which is root class for everything I told. So we should use this dot store and then say dispatch, and you should pass any action what you want here, which you want to perform. Here we are, I want to perform a customer remove, and this customer remove, where what is this actually? If you go to here, this is the customer remove. This is implementing a action, and this is the action which is of, sorry, this is of action from the Ngrx store. So you can say customer remove is the Ngrx compatible action that is being dispatched from the component. When I click the remove button, it will come and land here, and I'm dispatching the customer remove action, and that is going to remove from the state of the customers list. So here it will come and land here, this one, because the type is remove. This will match here, and this will perform this code. This code is nothing but a deletion of the customer from the list of the customers. So again, like that, same thing for customer add as well. For add customer, so I'm going to the new, create a new customer, and then I'm going to set the name, and then I'm going to dispatch the customer add. So think that maybe we have a student and the guardian entry. So whenever student gets added, maybe the guardian gets added automatically. So think that that is a scenario. And if you want to do two actions, and maybe if you have a customer like customer name, if you have a guardian name, so you should you should have the guardian name and then just call two times here. Sorry. See, line number 19 and 20, I am calling two. So this is the one which is the earlier one. So this is the one new one. So if you see, if I click once, it has to dispatch two times, and there will be two entries created for the same customer in this case. So let's see, with this code, I'm saving it. With this code, what will happen in our application? So I'm adding Praveen again. So if I click add, so it has to give the two entries with the same name, because I'm dispatching the add customer multiple times. I mean the two times. So here you have. So the two actions are dispatched, and the two customer entries are getting created in the set. This is how we interact with the state using the actions and the reducers. So effect is not covered in this example. Effect is nothing but again so instead of directly dispatching, I'll just show it one place. Maybe if you understand that as well, otherwise we can take it in once we start the actual course. So here add customer, right? So I am directly interacting with the store. I mean directly dispatching the action in the component itself. So this is the component, right? So think that my component, I don't want to keep all the dispatching of actions, all the responsibility of dispatching actions to my component, because my component has more complex things. Then I can do, what I can do is I can create a separate file and then put the effect there. And once I uh, call a particular action here, that action is not going to directly to the user. First it will go to the effects, and then it will do some of the tasks that you are written in your effect, and then it will do a state update using reducer. So there might be a, so like this, once you have a customer add, first it will talk to the server. First it do the API call. Only on the success of API, this will update the state like that. So this that uh, workflow can be added using the effects. So with this, I think I'm done with my demo class. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks for showing the NGRX. Can you um, uh, can you speak to me about a little about the basic architect no, not the basic architecture, but the basic files like a component and this one, just like an overview, not overview, but a quick importance of the TS file and then the component and then this one. Then we
Sure,
can
definitely. So So since you already know about the Angular architecture high level, Angular the project high level, right? So we have always have a CSS class and HTML class. HTML is a template that is going to be rendered on the browser, and the spec file is for the testing purpose, and the component is the actual the business logic, or maybe the interaction with the component, user component will be done here. So this is kind of wiring for your HTML. So if you know already template URL, this is the HTML. Once we render it for this HTML, there is a backend controller, you can say. It's not a backend, means it's not server side, it's a front end backend controller. So for this HTML, whatever you do interact, so that is responsible by this particular component. And whatever the CSS you perform, you do apply for this particular template, that will be defined in this one. And this is the one which is the tag. That tag is used in your actual HTML page. If you look at this one, right? So this is used in the app.component HTML. So here like this, customer view and customer add. So these are the your Angular components, one component, two component, like that, multiple components you can write. So once you include this one, it's kind of instantiating the this component. Okay. So like that, we have customer add and the customer view. There are two components, and model is nothing but just a, you can say in Java it is a Pojo class, plain Java plain class, and app component is again a app component is, this is a template for our root HTML, and this test for that, and this is the app component. So here you can say your all application level things you can perform here. So currently I'm only writing the title, and this title is being used in the HTML. If you see here, this is the title, and this title is replaced by the content of this particular thing. Suppose if I write something here, then my title is going to be changed. Okay.
Okay.
So then this is the app module. Again, this is a bootstrapper. So you might be already knowing. So this is bootstrap. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
so the more and more we learn about Angular, right? So yeah, we'll get to know about this decoration, what is ng module, and what are these declarations, imports,
yeah.
providers,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
bootstraps. So all
Yeah.
these things will come into picture. So maybe I can just high level I can say these are like, maybe when you know the Java programming language.
Yes, I work with Java. Yes.
Okay, so so in our Java programming, you might be knowing, right? If I want to write a main class, how should I write public static void main? So no one knows like why we have to write public static void main. I mean there is maybe reasonings, but so that's the ceremony, right? So like that we have a ng so Angular, so it define its own way, so that it has to be, in order to identify this particular TypeScript file as ng module. So it has to be decorated with an ng module, and what are the declarations, so that is nothing but declarations. What are the things that are going to be exposed by this module has to be listed here, and what are the things that is to be required by this module will be listed here, and the providers is nothing but additional services that we are going to write. Services basically, services going to come and sit here, and bootstrap is nothing but a, so in your module, what is the starting point, the starting point of the module. So this is the bootstrap component that we are going to list here. So this will be the component that is loaded first when we import a module.
Okay.
So this is high level Angular I was explaining.
Okay, Praveen. Yeah.